First of all, it's 9 AM in the morning on Wednesday, the 15th of July. So that means it's fairly cold sitting out here in a t-shirt and jeans. But a couple of things to keep in mind. First of all, this shirt's really accurate today for two reasons. One, I'm talking about a flight review. And two, today's the day where Qantas is doing its 1 hour joy flight over Brisbane. Now, I would have loved to have been on board, but unfortunately, $747 for an hour in business class and $400 for an hour in economy class. It's just a bit out of my price range at the moment. So unfortunately, I don't get to share that experience with you, but I'm also very glad I have had the chance to go on the 747. But anyway, today we're talking about a different flight that I took back in February, and that was between Newcastle and Sydney with FlyPelican on board the Jetstream 32. As soon as you arrive at the airport, you're aware that FlyPelican is a very small carrier. The check-in, boarding pass check at the gate, and escort to the aircraft are completed by the same person. Today's flight was very quiet, and there were just 4 passengers on board for this journey. At check-in, I was assigned an exit row seat, which was highly welcomed, as the legroom on board small regional aircraft like the Jetstream 32 can be a little limited. Boarding is conducted via the rear air stairs and after a few minutes walk across the tarmac. We then taxied out to the runway and prepared to take off. So sit back, relax and listen to the sound of those great little engines. Quick interruption, but I thought you'd want to see this. Once airborne, we climbed to a cruising altitude of 12,000 feet, where we didn't stay for very long, as the flight distance was just 76 nautical miles, or about 140 kilometres. With a flight this short, there is no onboard service or catering, and nor are there any cabin attendants, just the 2 pilots up the front. Check out the beautiful views as we climb out of Newcastle and start heading down the central coast towards Sydney. As we started our descent into Sydney, the forests and mountains gave way to the beautiful sprawling metropolis that is Australia's largest city. And to me, one of the most beautiful cities to see from the air. From up here, you can clearly see the city's icons such as the Harbour Bridge and the Sydney Opera House in their full beauty during daylight. There really is a magic to flying over Sydney at a low altitude. That being said, all good things must eventually come to an end, and we joined final approach and touched down in Sydney at just after 9:30. We then taxied to our gate in amongst some much larger aircraft than ours and parked at a remote stand where we boarded a bus to take us to the terminal. Not a proper airport bus, just a Mitsubishi Rosa, like you get taken home after having a few drinks at the pub. Once inside, because I only travelled with cabin baggage, I was able to quickly walk out the terminal and get a train into town, and the experience was fairly quick, but pricey, as the airport train in Sydney is always a massive rip-off. How much did that journey cost? Well, let's discuss that now. Okay, so let's start asking a few questions about value for money with this flight. So I paid $85 to fly with FlyPelican between Newcastle and Sydney. And in terms of value for money, I think that's something that you really need to think about with your own circumstances. And the reason I say that is if you get yourself one of these, an Opal card, or you use your credit or debit card, you can go and take a train between Newcastle and Sydney for off-peak, under $10. And considering my flight cost $85 and that the train takes 2.5 hours, and by the time that you get to Newcastle Airport, check in, go through security and drop your bag, and then get off the flight at the other end and get your bags and go back out, you're probably going to spend about the same amount of time getting into town. So on that front, if you're just travelling for convenience, the train is probably a better bet. However, if you really love the views out the window, a low altitude flight over Sydney on a commercial service is pretty much priceless, and that's what FlyPelican can deliver. A beautiful view out the window over Sydney at a nice low altitude. As always, thanks for joining me on Talking Flying, and see you again soon.